Today's episode of Formidable Opponents is brought to you by HelloFresh. Do you feel like you are stuck in a dinner rut? With HelloFresh, you get fresh, pre-measured ingredients with mouth-watering seasonal recipes delivered right to your door. Skip all those trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. You can now enjoy cooking and get dinner on the table in 30 minutes or less. With over 25 recipes to choose from each week, there is something for everyone to enjoy. All recipes are designed and tested by professional chefs and nutritional experts to ensure deliciousness and simplicity. You know, our show is about arguing the best, and I'm having a difficult time narrowing down what is my favorite HelloFresh meal. I love so many of them, but I have to say, the Gouda Vibes burger with the tomato jam and the potato wedges is amazing. Couple that with your favorite beer, put on your favorite game or movie, you're in for a fun night, topped off by an easy and delicious dinner. Go to the link in our show notes to get $80 off, including free shipping on HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit. We also want to remind you, sun's out and shades are in. Get your home summer ready with custom window treatments from Blinds.com. Get a high-end look without the high-end price with the most popular outdoor shades, and transform your backyard into the perfect weekend oasis with light filtering shades that help block UV rays without obstructing your view. Plus, right now, Blinds.com is offering up to 35% off everything, making it a breeze to upgrade any room in your home, indoors or out. With over 25 million blinds sold and over 35,000 five-star reviews, there's a reason why Blinds.com is the #1 online retailer of custom window treatments in the world. Whether you do it yourself or have them handle the install from start to finish, Blinds.com makes ordering custom window treatments online easy with free shipping and a 100% guaranteed perfect fit. Sunshine and barbecues are in the forecast. Upgrade your backyard and window treatments with Blinds.com today and enjoy your new view all summer long. Go to the link in our show notes to shop up to 35% off site-wide. That's the link in our show notes for up to 35% off site-wide. Rules and restrictions may apply. And now on to our show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 22 of Formidable Opponents, a show that pits three people who have known each other virtually their entire lives in a series of conversations as we argue what is the best in a variety of fun, engaging, and critical pop culture topics we all debate about. I'm Randall, and with me, as always, Bob and Joseph. And today's topic is best slasher movie villain. Before we do that, we want to give a shout out to Dina at Creative Little Pill. She does all our cover art. She did our cover art for this show. It's phenomenal as always. You could follow her on Instagram at Creative Little Pill. She does great work for us. Show some support. So going directly to today's topic, slasher films, one of the most popular horror subgenres. Slasher films hit their peak between 1978 to 1985. No coincidence that coincides with Larry Bird's peak. Great-looking teenagers and young adults being murdered, usually creatively by sharp tools. You can say these films were inspired by Alfred Hitchcock, and it has been said that the first slasher films were the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Black Christmas. You won't see TBS playing that one 24 hours a day on Christmas Day. The use of unconventional weaponry to slaughter, bludgeon, and violate, an ominous backstory that sounds too ill-omened to sound true. And of course, our villain, incapable of being killed, usually incapable of any sort of emotion. Some may say that unlike the Hitchcock era, the victims/characters of the 70s through 80s were never developed, leaving the audience focused on cheering for their favorite movie slashers. Many say that this, of course, changed when the Scream franchise put a new spin on developing their protagonists, providing a much-anticipated revival in the 90s. Much of that through self-awareness, clever dialogue, characters we actually cared about, actors who, for the most part, could act, and story arc. The slasher franchise that made us care again. We are talking today about dead teenager movies. And to quote author J.T. Heslop, these are trashy, formulaic, and in the case of its central antagonist, prone to idiotic pop psychology movies. Lambasted by stale acting, sometimes, maybe. We are not looking for DiCaprio in these movies. We are merely looking for decapitations. School is out, McCullough. So what do you have for us, boys? Let's talk a little bit about slasher films. Bob and Joseph, how are you guys?
I'm doing good, man. How are you today?
Doing good, doing great.
How's everybody feeling?
Feeling good, man. Feeling good talking about this topic.
So it's good to be back.
So Bob, you had sent us text. You selected this topic. It's something that we all grew up on. Tell us a little bit about your inspiration for wanting to discuss this topic, and then we'll get a little into the slasher movie tropes.
Slasher movies, I think they don't get enough credit for what they bring to the table. I used to love them as a kid growing up. Of course, they used to scare the shit out of me when I was young. But once I got into high school and as I got older, rewatching the old movies, it's something I've grown to love. Every Halloween, that whole month of October, we go through horror movies and slasher movies, I think, on a daily basis, all for those 31 days in October. Slasher movies kind of bring something different to the table. They're that little subgenre of horror, which makes it kind of cool, because in some cases you feel like this shit could actually happen, or maybe this was based on a true story in some way or some form. I've always kind of related to them. I love it because they're like the high school movies, but instead of the, it's the next step. Let's see what's life going to be like after high school. It's like, fuck, man, you're not going to survive. You may not get out of high school. So they're a cool little subgenre of horror. My personal favorite. I still watch them constantly and consistently. It's just my little favorite horror genre. What about you, Joe?
I like that little reference to American to the Next Step.
Yeah,
that's funny. Man, you know what? I feel exactly the same. As we got older, yes, when we were younger, maybe we shouldn't have been watching. If we did, nobody knew about it, but that's cool. We're not here to talk about that. But yeah, as you get older and you find yourself at home, especially during the month of October and Halloween, because if you're in a situation where, hey, you're just going to be at home because, you might have some trick-or-treaters, the best thing you can do is just sit at home and watch a bunch of scary movies. And so sitting at home, for me at least, and watching, a good scary movie, slasher movie, horror movie, it's really cool to go back and watch these things and see things that maybe you didn't see. And you get more of an appreciation for it. You can look at the silliness, you can point it out, and if you want to be like an asshole and just be like, it's so fucking fake, like, don't do that. Just enjoy them for what they were. It was something to get you out of the monotony of, like, maybe because a lot of these might have come out in the 80s. A lot of the ones that we're probably going to talk about and mention, because we don't, and we'll get into this later, we don't see a lot of it today. Maybe, you were sick and tired of the retro wave, go out to the party, and you just wanted to see some a little bit of action. If you were a high school kid in the 80s watching these, maybe you wanted to see your first pair of boobs. I mean, I don't know, because it seems like they were evident, they just had to be shown in a slasher movie in the 80s. But really, for me, it's just it's fun to, and it's like Bob mentioned, the fact that, hey, this goes into any horror movie I watch, whether it's scary. I think there's just, when the chance of it being actually real and actually happening is present, it makes these movies a lot better, makes them a lot more like shit. Lock my doors at night and don't go out, into the woods when I hear, the door that's open in the back for no reason whatsoever. I'm just going to stay inside. Don't do it.
Let me ask you guys this, because this has happened to me. You wake up at 4:00 in the morning, you have to take a piss, and you're like, I just saw a night of scary movies, slasher movies. I think I could wait 2 hours till sunup and just stay awake and not take a piss.
No, I can't do that.
You get that urge to really check and see what the weather is like on the movie channel and turn on the lamp. Yeah, I got you. I see what you mean.
Checking the curtain.
It's kind of ironic, and I'm sure we're going to get into this as the show goes on, but I know we've mentioned it in the past shows, like the slasher film, the slasher movies and slasher, villains, they kind of like faded off after, the Scream remakes and stuff like that, the late 80s, early 2000s. But isn't it kind of funny how nobody could make a really good slasher movie after that? But every psycho serial killer documentary came out on Netflix and Prime Video and all this that everybody's like hooked on, and you can't stop watching, and they can't stop making them. Maybe that speaks to what the audience or what our little generation still craves, that slasher film. But then they're like, oh, well, this is actually real. So I still think I'm more afraid of Freddy Krueger than I am of
Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that, because we follow a lot of podcasts that are murder podcasts. They dive into murders, they examine them, and they're prevalent on Netflix as well, HBO as well. So it's not that the slasher genre has gone out of style. Now people are going and examining it more as a biodoc than this weird fantasy world where this immortal being is going around killing attractive people. So it essentially never went away, but now it's gone from like this fictional world where there's clever lines, there's crazy characters, to now it's like, let's see what's going on. What is our fascination with this genre? I mean, just in general, what do you guys think?
I think it's just the fact that, maybe it's a little bit of preparation, maybe, or knowledge for yourself. If you're watching these, if you want to know, and personally, I'm not super big into the serial killer documentaries. I know they're big, but for me, no, I'd rather just stay in the imaginary world, because I'd like to have a laugh, or I'd like to have a quick throw. I'd rather not do that. But as far as like the fascination with it today, I think for me, I just think it's people wanting, hey, we want to know everything, and we have to know everything. We're for me, it's preparation. I think people just want to have some information, and hey, you want to be able to protect yourself, and you learn from what is out on these new Netflix documentaries, and maybe we're just trying to be prepared.
I think it's kind of crazy how you can see all these crazy ideas for these slasher villains, like the Freddy Kruegers and the Mike Myers and the Jasons and the Candymans and so on and so forth. And then you watch one of these serial killer documentaries and you're like, holy fuck, this is really fucked up. Like, this isn't made up. This isn't make believe. This isn't something some writer thought of in the middle of the night. This actually fucking happened, and it's kind of gruesome, and it's kind of scary. It's kind of fucking trippy. That makes you kind of step back and think about life. Like, Jesus Christ, there's some crazy people out there in the world. And like Joseph said, some people may prefer the slasher films and the horror movies, because then you get that bit of a laugh, and at the end of the day, you can pause it, you can rewind it, you can stop it, you can watch something else, or like Randy said, you can turn on the lights and watch the Weather Channel. Or is that me?
As you, I want to share with you guys my first experience with slasher movies. We have a running joke on this show where we talk about Betamax being like the hub for like, dirty porn movies. And the reason we did that was because I was looking through my dad's sock drawer one time and I found a movie called Virgins in Paradise. I was like, great, a vacation movie. And then I put that on. There were no virgins in that paradise.
But it was paradise.
It was, yeah. So when I was younger, we only had a Betamax, and my joke from that episode was we could only rent two things or three things. We could rent like bad comedies, like, Cheech and Chong movies, or we could rent like Best of SNL, or we could rent horror movies. And I remember being a young kid watching these movies like Prom Night, Pieces, My Bloody Valentine, Sleepaway Camp, which to this day, I mean, still messes me up. So I was watching these like very like low budget, very formulaic, very cheap slasher movies. But to this day, those cheap slasher movies, they affected me psychologically more than what's going on today. And you guys watch today's horror movies. And what is your take of today's horror movies traditionally, where kids are fucking dying and then coming back as spirits, to where the old days where it was just a slasher you had to worry about stabbing you with a knife?
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Like, I know Joseph's he's a real big movie buff when it comes to these new horror movies. I know he's in love with them. But me personally, I prefer the old style with the slasher villain. But yeah, it's crazy how we went from the slasher villain, the movie monster, to this like now, like, possessed dolls and people and houses and, all, sort of big plays off of The Exorcist, all different stories, possession stories, whatever it is. It's so crazy how we went from that. I think maybe since they're so into like, the serial killer documentaries, they went some more real life stuff. Maybe they're thinking like, shit, maybe, this is more real life to them, like, a haunted house, rather than, some guy who comes back from the dead, to haunt you wearing a hockey mask, right?
As far as for me, yeah, Bob's right. I'm really big into the horror movies today. I think it comes down to how sensitive maybe the audiences are today, or in people in general, depending on what you want to see. We're more interested, or maybe the powers that be that are producing these films, maybe and I'm not complaining, because I love them. I love the Conjuring movies. I love I'm really big fan of movies that as far as like I can't really call them horror movies. I would call them more scary movies or whatnot, that have this entity or something, demonic, or a ghost or something that's coming after people for, whatever it may be. I think that the issue today is maybe it's just not something that we can put out today, because there's so much gruesome stuff already in the world, like you mentioned, Randy. You know what? One, back in the days, these movies were, it was, yes, like you mentioned, they were high school kids that were getting murdered via a slasher. And nowadays, that's not something that we really want. I don't think people want to see that. And I'm not saying I want to, and I'm not saying I don't want to. I think that we've got so much stuff going on in the world that maybe we'd rather just be, haunted by a ghost or something crazier than that, than an actual psycho walking around with a mask.
Maybe like I think it's all started with like psychological thrillers back in the 60s and 70s, and then we kind of transitioned into the slasher film villain, and then I think we're kind of going back to that psychological type of thriller.
Or maybe they're just done so cheesy now. I mean, not all of them.
I think with movies in general, and I was talking to Bob about this before you had logged on, Joseph, is that I was watching a lot of these kills over and over. And I was like, these weren't scary. Like as a kid, it would like frighten the crap out of me. But when you see it, but the thing that frightened you was the music, was the startle, was the pop out. And that's what people wanted to pay for, is to scare me, but don't fucking traumatize me. I think now it's kind of the opposite. It's like, traumatize me and make me believe that this shit could happen to me. I'll give you an example. I was watching Paranormal Activities on a date years ago, and I remember the person I was with said, you were sleeping like the whole like last 30 minutes. I was like, I wasn't sleeping. I had my eyes closed because I didn't want the shit scared out of me because we showed up late and we sat in the second row. So I mean, stuff like that. And I'm going to be completely transparent here. I'm probably the least fan of horror movies compared, and you can tell by the tattoos on both these guys, I have none, that they're more into horror movies than I am. But I love them. I love watching a good slasher.
I like, I mean, it's supposed to, I think it was Hitchcock used to say, like, always make the audience suffer as much as possible. And I think he's got a point. Like, it's all about the anticipation. I think that's what the music always used to fuck us up. Cause like the music builds, or it has that kind of, when you hear the Jaws music or that certain, the Mike Myers,
True.
Whatever, you hear that little sound bite and it's like, oh shit. And, the hairs stand up in the back of your neck and you're kind of like sit up in your seat and you're waiting for something to pop out or somebody to get killed or something crazy to happen. So I think the anticipation sometimes is a lot worse. But yeah, I agree with you, dude. It used to scare the fuck out of me when I was a kid. No lie. Yeah, I mean, you all know I hated them. It used to scare the shit. I used to watch Creep Show when I was like 5 years old.
Gosh, I
like my older cousin's Creep Show and Tales from the Crypt. It used to scare the fuck out of me. But then, like, as I got older, I'd like revisit it and be like, damn, that was cool, or damn, that was crazy, or that wasn't as bad as it was. But I found it, like, as I grew older, I found a real, like, I wouldn't say connection with it. I would say something like a fondness for it, because I really, really liked them.
The thing that fucked me up on Creepshow the most was that guy that had cockroaches coming out of his mouth. And,
oh yeah,
and the thanks for the ride, lady. And oh man, I fucking hated Creepshow, man. I want to ask you guys, transitioning a little bit, what defines a great movie slasher? When you're looking at a movie slasher, what are some of the things you're looking at that I got to watch this movie because this movie slasher fits A, B, and C?
I think that they have to be unique. They have to have this look. You know what I mean? You can't just be, just a dude in jeans and a t-shirt going out and killing anybody. I think that just doesn't work. I think they have to have a unique look, a unique weapon, a unique style of killing. Obviously, they can't be killed, right? They have to keep coming back and keep coming back. That's the makes of a good slasher film, monster or villain, they're hard to kill. Something like a good backstory always makes it that much more, I guess, complex. Maybe complex is not the right word, but I think they have to have a good backstory to them. Definitely have to have that look, that killing style, and of course, they're very hard to kill.
I agree, and I'm probably gonna just elaborate on a little more what Bob said. Yes, I agree. The look, the story, I think, is probably always the best thing. The look, as far as the movies, if we're watching like a slasher movie, what's going to make one great, specific look, something that scares you movie-wise. I think this is where we might have to go back and be like, okay, well, then what's the difference between this and a freaking serial killer documentary that we're watching on Netflix? These people in the documentaries, they may not have a certain look, although some of them did. Some of them did do some stuff, but they're just some random, they could have just been some normal people. Were they doing exactly the same thing? Do they maybe have their own story that drove them to be that type of person in these documentaries? Possibly. But as for the movie stake, I agree with that. The backstory, the look, something that just because it's a movie, it's got to scare you. If you're watching a movie just about a serial killer, well, then, hey, it's just some random person. There's stuff like that. And not to say that they can't be scary. There are, movies that are made, even slasher movies that we'll probably talk about, where there's not like a crazy, scary, creepy look, but they are what they are. I think for me and for what I think Bob and for most people would be it's going to be the look. What really, what do you want to be for Halloween, and what, is going to scare you out and about for me?
I want to ask you guys another thing, and to be completely transparent, and we picked the big three. We picked Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, and Jason Voorhees. But I want to ask you guys, our slasher films a thing of the past? We had the golden era, 1978 to 1985. And what I think would happen, the reason I wanted to mention our picks, because I wanted to make a point on this question. Those movies kept churning every year. We never had a breath to take to wait for the next one. It was, Friday the 13th part 2, 3, 4. They were coming out in the 80s, and I think everybody grew exasperated. It was like the same thing over and over. Same thing with Nightmare on Elm Street. Same thing with Halloween. It just lacked the substance anymore. And I think people grew tired of it. It's kind of like when Hootie and the Blowfish came out with Cracked Rear View. It was an awesome album. And then they came out with Fairweather Johnson very quickly. I never thought I'd compare Hootie and the Blowfish to Jason Voorhees, but have we seen everything? Are they a thing of the past? And before you guys answer this, we know Kevin Williamson came out with Scream in 1996 and helped to revitalize it, but it's no longer sustained, or at least not to my knowledge. Do you think that slasher films are a thing of the past? Will they ever be revitalized? And what are your thoughts on this?
I think we might be in a situation where they are a thing of the past. And it's like what I mentioned earlier, it's going to come down to the audience and the time that we live in. It's going to have a big effect. Is anybody going to want to see this? And, money is a big thing. It's always a big thing. When you're messing with somebody's, with dollars and cents, is somebody going to take a chance and put out a movie that's going to, hey, you know what, that might be too violent. Oh, that might offend somebody. I don't want to risk my money putting together a movie, producing a movie, making a movie, even though I might want to do it, that's not going to get seen. It's going to have received backlash. And so I think, we may have seen, we'll get into it a little later. As far as like new slashers, new characters, I think we're done with that. We'll see the remakes, we'll see the continuations of the slashers from the past. We'll see them probably for, I don't know, we're gonna see them nonstop. But
can I say I just don't think anybody's original anymore. Nobody can come up with an original idea for a slasher film other than Happy Death Day. I know I spoke about this with Joseph the other day when we were hanging out. Happy Death Day was a really cool. I hadn't seen it. I'd never seen it, and I caught it a couple of weeks ago, and it was pretty good, man. It kind of had like a little bit of a throwback feeling to it, to the slasher films. I thought it was pretty good. Nobody's created a new slasher villain anymore, and everybody's just regurgitating the same shit over and over again. They remade Halloween, and then Rob Zombie remade Halloween, which is awesome, and then they remade Halloween again, and they brought Jamie Lee Curtis back, which is fucking cool as hell. But like, nobody can come up with, they redid Friday the 13th. They remade Nightmare on Elm Street. They remade a lot of these films, My Bloody Valentine. They regurgitated them over and over again. It seems like maybe not so much that the slasher film genre is like a dead thing or dying breed, because they're still remaking these movies. The problem is they're not coming up with an original character, an original villain, an original slasher, something to kind of change the game, kind of the way Scream and Ghostface did in '96.
We might be seeing them, but they might be in a different way. And I before I say that, I will say that there is a current movie that there's going to be a part 2. What is it? Don't Breathe part 2. There was the original Don't Breathe. I'm not going to go too far into it because I haven't seen the first one, but I do know the premise is, believe a blind man who lives on his own, and 2 people come in to rob him, but his other senses are so heightened that he ends up tearing these kids apart. It's the worst thing they could have done. So, and they're going to see a part 2. I'm assuming he takes care of them in a violent way. And can you call that a slasher? I'm not sure.
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't call it.
But as far as But as far as what I first started, I was saying one of the things, and we talked about this, Bob. You mentioned it. You reminded me of Stuntman Mike in Death Proof. He wasn't the typical slasher, but was he killing people in a particular way with a particular item? It was his car. He wasn't just all scary. He was actually a charming individual who was captivating and articulate and smart. But in the end, he was killing you, and he was trying to kill you with his car. So it's kind of like we still got him, but they're just different. We're not seeing the scary guy walking around with an ice pick, an axe, a knife, or something like that.
I thought Joyride with Paul Walker and Steve Zahn was
that's another one too.
That was a really good one.
That came out 2001. Not your typical slasher movie, as we said. These have evolved. They're no longer nameless faces. Now you're having A-listers come out as main characters, as we saw with Scream. But they're out there. They're just few and far between. And sometimes the definition of what a slasher film truly is sort of stretches. But you guys are right. When we're talking about slasher movies, we're always talking about the same 4 or 5. When somebody dresses up as a noted slasher for Halloween, they're dressing up as Jason, Freddy, Michael, Leatherface. It's all the same. I will share something with you guys. I took a screenwriting class with Kim Hinkle. Kim Hinkle was a co-writer for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He also wrote and directed Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation, with Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger. Don't ask him about it, because he did not want to talk about it, and we tried to get him to talk about it. We asked him a lot of questions. He was doing the screenwriting class back at a community college where we're from. I think he teaches at Rice now, and he's a great guy to work with. Well, not work with, but great guy to study under. When we asked him a lot about these Texas Chainsaw Massacre, he talked about Ed Gein, the serial killer that Leatherface was inspired by. But he was very matter of fact. I mean, you would expect somebody, well, at least I would expect somebody to get really into the details and into the nitty gritty. But he just told us point blank that, hey, me and Toby Hooper, his buddy, the guy that directed the movie, we just wanted to do something scary. We wanted to do something that was low budgeted, and the way we were going to scare people was to have that intro. The intro was everything, based on a true story, and this crazy cannibal family of cannibals and their wacky son with a leather mask made of human flesh. They knew that selling that aspect was going to be tough, but making it seem like it's a real story. And I remember growing up in the 80s, living in Texas, we thought that shit was real. Yeah, and it was wild.
Yep. I was going to mention, it's kind of like what the Blair Witch Project did in like 2001 or whenever it came out.
Yeah.
That gave us, we were just all nauseated by that movie just because of the cameras. I'll talk to you guys a little bit about the honorable mentions. Who are some of the movie slashers that didn't make the cut, but we want to talk a little bit about?
Well, I mean, it's like you already said. Look, we picked the best, the top 3, obviously. So to not say that they weren't in honorable mention, it would be stupid. So Chucky, the doll, Charles Lee Ray, or Chucky the doll. Leatherface, of course, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Ghostface is another one, because it was a little bit, the mind play on that one was also really awesome. Another one I'd probably have to say and he doesn't get mentioned very often, but it was a slasher movie. It's one that we didn't mention as far as keeping the new, right along there with Scream. I don't remember his last name, but his first name is Ben. From I Know What You Did Last Summer, the Hookman, the Hookman that was seeking revenge on the kids that ran him over and thought that they had killed him. From
Where's the foot?
Summer. Where's the foot?
I always think of that from Scary Movie. I have a few. I mean, you can't mention slasher film without mentioning Norman Bates from Psycho. He's kind of the father of slasher films, or should I say mother? Psycho is one of my favorite all-time horror flicks to watch, especially during October. The way it was shot, Alfred Hitchcock, man, he's just one of those guys. He's one of those horror greats that just knew how to fuck with people, mentally. Norman Bates was a great character. And I think he kind of started it all. That iconic shower scene where he's obviously dressed in drag as his mother, stabbing Jamie Lee Curtis's mom. Pretty cool. In the shower, that iconic scene, I think, started the whole slasher movement. You know what I mean? Out of all the scenes and about the entire, the movie's great. The movie's great, start to finish. I love that horror movie. But that iconic scene, I think, it kind of jump-started. This was in 1960. Kind of jump-started the whole slasher film genre.
I agree with that.
the Candyman, Tony Todd, which ironically, 2020, he's coming out with a brand new one. It's a really cool kind of backstory, kind of crazy, saying his name the 3 times, like, Beetlejuice or La Llorona, right? In the Bloody Mary, whatever it was when we did in elementary. Leatherface, of course. Scream, Ghostface was pretty amazing because it was the first time that there was 2 killers in a slasher film. It was 2 guys. It wasn't just they're triplets, man. No, there's two serial killers, or 2 killers, I'm sorry, in the movie. And that's what kind of sets him apart. Ghostface, what makes him kind of cool is that in each movie it's a different character just under the hood. You know what I mean? It could be anybody, and they kind of play to that murder mystery type of feel as well as the psychological thriller and the slasher type of genre. But those are my picks. Jigsaw, I don't know if we mentioned Jigsaw. Pretty cool.
Oh yeah,
Jigsaw was a kind of a new, different type of, like you said, we're kind of stretching the slasher genre a little bit into that, psychological type of killing. Like, he didn't kill anybody, but he would set it up to where, like, hey, you do this or you die. If you don't do this, someone else dies, and that type of thing. Pretty cool premise.
I had a few of those. I did have Leatherface. My first experience with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was part 2. I believe I saw part 2 at the drive-in, and that was the movie where, I was like, nah, it's okay. I won't take a piss. I'll just let my bladder explode until, 6 a.m. because I am not getting up, thinking that somebody was going to be behind the curtain waiting for me. Always checking the shower curtain like you're prone to do. The one I had written down here, and I'm going to admit, I've never seen any of this guy's movies, but I know he's popular. Pinhead from the Hellraiser series. Have you guys watched any of these Hellraiser movies? I have not.
I've seen one. It's just not my style. It's like they try to bring this sci-fi with demon, and it's kind of like it's a little too much. It's not my cup of tea. Not my kind of shit.
I can't consider that a slasher movie though. That's what's
okay.
But no, like what Bob said, seen it. It's out there. Don't get me wrong. The dude is fucking scary. If you see that anybody standing around in that getup, you're gonna fucking freak out. But I can't. I couldn't personally put it in this genre.
That's the way everybody dressed to all the Marilyn Manson shows back in '99.
It's just scary. It's just scary acupuncture.
I was laughing. Real quick story, because I know you had mentioned the drive-in. And when I was younger, whenever I'd say, like, oh, I'm going to go see a scary movie at the movies, my dad would always laugh at me like, hey, your Uncle George, because we always mention our Uncle George. We took him to go see The Exorcist at the drive-in. He slept with a shotgun under his bed for the next 2 years. It always made me laugh. So when you mentioned like horror movies, I was like, oh, that's a funny story. And then you mentioned drive-in. I was like, I have to say it.
I have to mention this one just out of sheer comedy. The Leprechaun. Everybody thinks David Schwimmer wasn't the first annoying little shit that gave Jennifer Aniston popularity. It was the Leprechaun, and people forget that. And those movies used to be like those coming home, watching on HBO, and just like saying, wow, this is ridiculous. But it was fun to watch, kind of like in the same cut of Chucky a little bit. I also have the Creeper from Jeepers Creepers. I don't know if you guys consider that slasher.
One. Yeah, I maybe I would say so. He is a movie monster. I mean, he'd probably be more along the lines of like Pumpkinhead, which he's more of a monster than I don't know. It's like there's always got to be, I think, a human type of quality to these slasher villains than I think more movie monsters. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
I agree.
I get you. It's funny because we were talking a little bit about this. Bob, I took you to go watch. I know what you did last summer. You were still very young. Yes, I remember I took you to the movies. Yes, keeping up our weekly Jennifer Love Hewitt streak going on. But yes,
dude. And none of us got up to take a leak.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think you stayed at my house at like 4 a.m. We were watching like MTV videos or something.
Exactly. So now we're going to get to our selections. Joseph, you're up first. Who did you choose and why?
So me personally, I went with Michael Myers from the Halloween franchise. I think this guy is the best. He is the top. And I'm going to talk about him a little bit. So some quick facts. Born on October 19th, 1957 to Peter and Edith Myers. And he is the brother of Judith, his older sister, and Laurie, his younger sister. I'm going to leave it at that because as far as family, because if you know anything about the Halloween franchise, it should be that there are 4 timelines. And depending on how you choose to follow this franchise, he either has other relatives like brothers-in-law, niece, nephew, great niece, things like that. So it's really going to come down to what you're going to follow. So I'll just leave it at that. Mother, father, and 2 sisters. Officially, we're in the quote unquote final timeline. This timeline, which may or may not conclude with the upcoming Halloween Kills, which will be released later this year, and Halloween Ends, scheduled to be released October of 2020. Look at me pushing movies to the future.
I know, baby. You better get a cut of that.
All right. Yeah, I better. So Michael Myers, on October 31st, 1963, at age 6, Michael commits his first act of murder. Dressed in a clown costume, he went into the kitchen, picked up a large kitchen knife, walked upstairs, and stabbed his older sister Judith to death. He quietly walks back downstairs and into the front yard, where he's discovered by his parents having just arrived back to the house. Michael's taken to Smith's Grove Sanitarium, where he becomes a patient to Dr. Samuel Loomis, who is portrayed by Donald Pleasance. I hope I said Donald Pleasance. I said that name right. I just want to say a quick shout out to this dude. This dude was awesome. He played Dr. Samuel Lewis. He's a legend. The character Samuel Lewis, and the original portrayal by Donald Pleasance. This guy is awesome. He sold this movie. He's just great. I mean, this guy really made you fear Michael Myers. Anyway, so he spent 15 years with Dr. Loomis, barely moving, never speaking a word, and it isn't until October 30th, 1978, that Michael escapes from the hospital before he's to be taken before a judge so that Loomis can argue that he remained locked up and never released. And so it begins. If you've ever seen a halfway decent Myers wax figure or life-size bust, this is one of the most terrifying things you can see out at night. Even in the day, I don't want to see this guy around the corner. Imagine for a second, you're at the store, local HEB or something like that. HEB is a local chain here in Texas. Shout out to HEB. Out for a run or just being out at night, and you see in the distance this, like we do in the movies sometimes, this figure, the shape, the boogeyman, as he's also known in the movies. And I like the shape because I think that best describes what Michael Myers is. He's this walking evil with no expression, no emotion, nothing. All he knows is a kill, the hunt and the kill. This isn't about body counts, and although I did look it up, and if from what I saw recently is most accurate, Michael is second only to Jason Voorhees with 121 kills. Again, this is not what it's about. Look, it's the sheer evil of him, the sadistic calm, the relentless pursuit with seemingly nothing that can stop him. Has he died? Apparently not. Can he be killed? Apparently not. And I know that some of the picks that we've mentioned, and maybe your picks as well, which you'll explain, they might never die either. But look at this for a minute. Does Michael Myers have any real weakness? He doesn't. Why? Because he's not a human being. He never was. I mentioned the calmness to him. Let's not forget, he's a smart being. And if you don't agree with that, go back and watch the films. The numerous attempts to catch him, stop him, trap him, they don't work. The way he will sneak up on someone and just destroy them, I mean, unmatched in my opinion. This guy comes out of nowhere behind a door that you think you locked, and somehow he's already in that room. He's there to get you. An insane amount of strength to get out of traps and fire and cages and whatever else it may be that you want to throw at him. He will find a way out of it, a way to continue, and a way to continue to kill you. The Halloween franchise is the most beloved of the genre, the slasher genre, whatever you want to call it. It's the reason we've seen films and the reason we're going to see at least 2 more films. I'm not saying they're all great, but I am saying that none of them went the route of like a comedic slasher, like Chucky's, like Child's Play, or some other insane incarnation. I mean, specifically the Child's Play movies. I mean, those took a deep turn to like weird comedy. Yeah, dark comedy, weird stuff. I mean, they suck now. They're horrible. No one wants to see another Child's Play movie. At least I don't. The most recent remake sucked too. I didn't follow the original story, and it hurts me to say that because I'm a big fan of Hamill and his voice acting. If you don't know, Hamill was the voice of Chucky. But it sucked. The Halloween franchise has never done that, and it never will. We are going to see 2 more Halloween movies, and they don't look anything funny at all. They look like they're going to be brutal. They look like they're going to continue what was the original story of Halloween and showcase just how crazy and messed up the being that is Michael Myers. We're never going to see a Halloween in space. And yes, I'm talking to you, Jason X. So that's my take, boys.
All right, I'll start off first. Halloween is a classic. I mean, there's no arguing that. It was the blueprint. I love John Carpenter. I love The Assault on Precinct 13. I love They Lived. In Halloween, you could credit it with creating the final girl trope, where in every slasher movie, it's a girl or I should say a woman who survives and kills, or at least, hinders the main character for the next sequel or whatever. So creating that with Jamie Lee Curtis was just brilliant because it's been copied left and right. And, in full disclosure, I did pick Jason Voorhees. We did have a lot of the inspiration for the Friday the 13th movies were from Halloween. The man killed his sister and he killed a dog, which was crazy. Jamie Lee Curtis, as you mentioned before, Bob, is psycho actress Janet Leigh's. That was good publicity. Going back to John Carpenter, he created what I feel and what I think many feel is a great suspense thriller. I think movies afterwards, as I mentioned, took this idea, took away all the artistry, wiped away a lot of the stylistic sequencing, and gave way to what we now know as a traditional slasher film. The first Halloween is fantastic. It is a slasher film. I don't want to mislabel it. It is truly a slasher film, but my take from Halloween compared to the other movies is that Halloween focuses on a very specific sort of realm. It's like almost like I haven't seen all the Halloween movies, but from what I've seen, and I know part 3 didn't have Michael Myers, it's just very specific into the way it details the story. It's almost a continuum, which is great if you love storytelling. Not so great if you love just cut 'em up slasher films. And I'm just saying that. Later, I think Halloween 5, we find out that he had a connection with a cult and that he might have been influenced by his supernatural abilities. He's a boogeyman, as you mentioned, with a William Shatner mask and greased lightning coveralls. Humorless. He doesn't have any catchphrases, very quiet, but very focused. I think a lot of tropes from the Halloween movies take place from, these serial killer documentaries, or maybe they were studying serial killers when this was written and directed. I think he's a phenomenal movie slasher. I just don't think he's a slasher in terms of like the broad base that a Jason or a Freddy goes to different stories, different people are involved. And that's what I like to watch when I'm watching a slasher films. I don't care about the people. I care about Jamie Lee Curtis. I don't care about the victims that the slasher kills, but I do care about the Dr. Loomises and the family that Michael Myers is terrorizing. And that for me just kind of taints it a little bit and kind of makes me root more for the protagonist rather than the actual slasher. Bob?
Easy to admit, it's my favorite slasher film of all time. Michael Myers, that mask, the look, it's definitely iconic in the world of horror. That little sideways tilt of his head and that look when he kills one of the characters in the first one always got me, like, that's fucking creepy, the way he's just staring at him after he knifes the dude. He knifes Bob, actually, which is pretty ironic, right? I don't have a lot of negative things to say about Halloween and John Carpenter's Halloween more specifically. The first one was just a fantastic movie. Part 2 was great too because it was like the same night continuation in a hospital, and I thought it was really, really cool that they continued it like that night. It was a direct continuation, although John Carpenter was dead set on not doing it. That wasn't the movie that he wanted. The one thing I will say, this is the one thing that's bothered me, and I think this is one thing that holds him back: the mask, the William Shatner mask. In part
it's
1,
not a William Shatner mask.
Yes, it's the William Shatner mask.
I'll talk about this. Go ahead, and I'll talk about it. Go.
No, but my problem with it is not that it's a William Shatner mask. I'm talking about the mask. His look. It's not the same in each movie.
I'll put the mask back on right now.
It's not consistent. It's not consistent, and that's what ruins it for me. In Halloween 1. In Halloween 2, it's the same mask. In Halloween 3, which he hardly comes out on, we don't really see him. In Halloween 4, it's a completely different mask. I think one of the show writers or producers actually had it under her bed. So when they brought it back, they had to like clean it off, and they had the hair had been messed up, so they had to redo the hair. It looks like a completely different Michael Myers mask.
He's handsome in that way.
In Halloween, yeah, his hair slicked back and everything. Fuck. And then Halloween 5, it changed again. The mask changed again, and they're all kind of. He actually became kind of laughable. It was like he didn't look like the scary Michael Myers mask from part 1 from the original. It kind of looked like this cheap Nicaraguan version of Michael Myers, Joseph. And this really threw me off. I remember not too long ago, actually during Halloween, because I hadn't seen Halloween 4 or Halloween 5 in like the longest time, and I believe Halloween 5 was like on AMC or something, and I put it on, and my wife passed by and she's like, "What are you watching? Is this Michael Myers? Is this like the original?" I was like, "No, I don't know what episode, which movie is this?" He didn't even look the same. And it really, really bothered me because that look, it's that mask, I should say, is iconic in the world of horror movies in slasher film genre. And they changed it, and they changed in those little changes, made him look completely, I don't know, man. It threw me off. I didn't like it. And I think it held back a lot of his movies. Bravo to Rob Zombie. And during Rob Zombie's rendition of it, he made an awesome mask, a little more gruesome, a little more dirty. I really liked what he did with the mask, a little bit more towards the original. But in part 4 and part 5, it was a huge turnoff for me. And I think that kind of like, I wouldn't say it ruined the experience, but it kind of ruined the sequels for me. Like all I really want to see is Halloween 1. And I'll watch Halloween 2 as well. But the other ones I can't really stomach, even the one with Paul Rudd. Shout out to Paul Rudd, because the mask was different and he just looked different and he just didn't have that same horrifying look.
The Mask I chose not to talk about because look, there's like one, I didn't want to piss off anybody because there are like a bunch of like not that I care, but you know what, I didn't think it was yeah, I'm contradicting myself. Yeah. I'm talking about the look, but look, the mask to me wasn't so much the biggest thing. It was the or lack thereof person who was committing these crimes. It was doing the slashing. And yes, well, so that people don't, if you don't know, yes, the original mask was made off of a William Shatner. I think it was supposed to be a William Shatner death mask for Star Trek. That I'm not sure if it got used. I'm not a Star Trek buff, so I can't say that the mask was ever used. Yes, this particular mask, this mold, was then crafted into the original Michael Myers mask, but I didn't want to focus on that. I wanted to focus on the character itself. But to your point, I know that the mask does go through a lot of changes, and I think maybe the reason for that, and what sucks is that's like you mentioned, Carpenter. You know what? He was like, he didn't want to do part 2. And then all these other ones that kept coming out afterwards, you know what? If Carpenter wanted to continue this as do part 2, maybe continue this as this long as series, and maybe he would have been smart enough and made more of these masks specifically looking all exactly the one. It's the audience ourselves, as far as the mask, we're the ones that suffered because they didn't take care of the original one. And maybe the second one, because let's do the second one. Well, no, they should have made more masks after the first one if they were planning on doing the second one. And I think it's just because maybe we weren't, the plans of the sequels weren't supposed to be.
Yeah.
Happen.
In all fairness, according to John Carpenter, that was it. Halloween was supposed to be a solo movie, and that was it. Like, yeah. He wasn't planning, so that's probably why they didn't take care of the mask. But it is something that really bothers me about it.
And I'm not gonna lie, it does too. Like, yeah, there's that one where he just like, this looks really weird and creepy. And yeah, you're right, the hair is slicked back. I was like, what is this guy going to a fucking bar? Is he going to a restaurant or some shit?
And he has high cheekbones and fuller lips by part 4. It's like,
it's a little bit different. But I didn't want to focus on the mask, and I know it's the central part of him, but I went with my other what I use. So I mean, I understand what you're saying, because it can be a little bit boring, and like you mentioned, at least Rob Zombie did it better. He did a little bit better effort, except for that second one. Like, what the hell? Why was the mask? We're not supposed to see Michael Myers' face. If you saw Halloween 2, the remake that Rob Zombie did, we see a little bit of like half of Michael Myers' face, and
they show like a little small section of his face in the original Halloween right before Dr. Loomis shoots him. So I mean, and it kind of takes away from some of the luster, you know what I mean? Like, once you unmask the killer, they're just human, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it does kind of take away from some of the luster of it.
We'll go on to my selection. I picked Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th movies. First of all, Friday the 13th was originally, you talked a little bit about Halloween being a standalone. Friday the 13th was supposed to be an anthology. It was supposed to be different movies set on Friday the 13th based on the superstition that Friday the 13th is a bad luck day. But the first movie did so well, they decided, let's continue these characters and let's see where we could go with this. They went 10 movies, and continuing on, they're probably going to reboot this several more times before it's all said and done. Yes, this film purposefully wrote the success of John Carpenter's Halloween, as I mentioned before. That was an inspiration, no doubt. And yes, Jason's mother did all the killing in part 1, and in part 5, the killing was done by a paramedic who had gone insane. So that leaves us with 48 other movies where Jason is the killer. I'll say some of the good things I enjoyed about Jason Voorhees. We know that he was anti-bullying. We know that he was a champion for anti-bullying. He hated good-looking young people who were about to have unprotected sex. He was vengeful. He was somebody that was left to die by a bunch of camp counselors who did not pay attention to him. Some of the things he did that I enjoy, he killed Crispin Glover in the final chapter. That alone makes him the best. I mean, George McFly for the uninitiated.
He killed Kevin Bacon, sir. That guy's a national treasure.
It was the first movie was so gory that the Motion Picture Association told the producers to scale back on the gore for the sequels. So we were looking at far more gory instances, which I think would have risen the slasher reputation of Jason Voorhees. Look at some of the things he killed with: a pitchfork, a sauna rock, a hot poker, a hacksaw, a butcher's knife, a corkscrew, a flare gun, liquid nitrogen. In that space movie, he picked up some woman in a sleeping bag and swung her like a baseball bat to a tree. Also, he didn't discriminate. He killed men. He killed women. He once killed a disabled man. I mean, this guy did not take any mercy on anybody. And I think that's what made him terrifying, is that you knew that if Jason would kill anybody in his path, that you could be next, right? The man went to space before Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, and Elon Musk. Although I wish all four of them could have gone together. I think Jason stayed on script. I think there was no pathways. We saw a lot of from Halloween and even Friday the 13th. We saw a lot of going back in time. I know, Bob, you'd mentioned John Carpenter disagreeing with continuing the Halloween franchise. He also disagreed that Jamie Lee Curtis's character, Laurie, shouldn't have been Michael Myers's sister. It took away from the mystique. So he was bothered by that. But with Jason, you knew what you were getting. It was just riveting. It was just comedy. It was the way I think when people watch these movies. Now, here's my definition of a good slasher movie. Yes, stories matter, but that's not what you go to watch a slasher movie for. You go to shut off your brain and see these creative death scenes. One of my favorite death scenes in Friday the 13th was in Jason Takes Manhattan. This one guy who was an amateur boxer, he was like punching Jason, and he was tired out because he could not move him. So he goes, "Give me your best shot." And Jason gives him an uppercut and knocks his head clean off. It ends up in a car somewhere. Like I said, I can't say anything about the stories. The stories are what they were. Very basic. Kid drowns or almost drowned. His mom takes vengeance on a bunch of camp counselors who were not paying attention to her son, goes back and kills for him. He comes back, gets a hockey mask in part 3, starts killing everybody after having, I think part 2, he wore like some sort of satchel or something. And then he was just a killing machine. There was no rhyme or reason. It was all popcorn. It was all just, sit on the edge of your seat and see what's going on. And that's what bothers me when movie critics start dissecting these movies. Like the story is inconsistent or the acting sucks. Yes, the stories are supposed to be inconsistent because this is just a slasher movie. It's hard to have a continuing gripping story when you're trying to just measure different stories all at once. It's difficult to have people you care about. You want the killer to start killing people that you would typically hate yourself. And I think that's what Friday the 13th did, is the people that Jason was murdering pretty much more or less deserve to be murdered. Now, he never murdered any children. Thankfully, I think Corey Feldman stayed alive. Dudley from Different Strokes stayed alive. But he was, like I mentioned before, I'll wrap up with this: anti-bullying, hated young people about to have sex, killed in a variety of different ways. He was just entertaining. And I think when you think of a slasher villain, the first thing that comes to your mind is the machete, the hockey mask, and this big 6'9" monster of a man just mowing down young teenagers. Guys, what are your thoughts?
Jason, first of all, Jason's another one of the big 3. You didn't know. I know you said that it's going to be completely contradictory to what you said. Like, you knew what you were going to get. You really didn't know what you were going to get. The first film was kind of like a revenge film, and it was the mother doing the killing. The second film, we get introduced to Jason, and he doesn't know what he's going to kill with. He doesn't know what his look is. He's wearing a fucking potato sack. Not a satchel. That was Joan Behar, or whatever her name is from the View. He doesn't know. He doesn't really find a mask until part 3. And I think it's like, of course, it's inspired by Halloween. Some could even go as far as say it's a knockoff of Halloween. Something that's different, and I want to say this too. Something that's different from this one is you don't want to die. Just stay the fuck out of Crystal Lake or Manhattan or space. You just stay out of those 3 fucking spots, and Jason can't get to you. The original, what bothers me as much, and maybe it shouldn't bother me, is what I think kind of pulls him away from being the greatest, because I do believe he's one of the top 3, top 5 of all time in this genre, is that his mom was a killer in the first one. Is that the story is definitely cool, that it's a revenge because they let him drown in the lake and everybody's out partying and stuff like that instead of trying to save him. So the mom comes and takes revenge. Great horror movie, psychological movie. Then the second one was kind of like, oh man, we really got to try to capitalize on bringing in this new slasher villain. We could take it. That's why they have the kid, the ghost of Jason or whatever, his monster jumping out of the lake at the end of part 1 and grabbing the girl and dragging her into the lake. They kind of trying to capitalize on bringing that new slasher villain. You're right that he does have this kind of look. It's kind of has a coverall look too. It's kind of, I think he's a little too similar to Michael Myers in that sense. It was good. In the 70s and 80s, kids were still going to a lot of summer camps. It was kind of a great idea. What if there's a serial killer or a slasher in a summer camp? It's got a great idea. It's a great premise. The first one was outstanding, especially why they're killing. I wish he had started off the entire thing. If it had been him seeking revenge and it had been him showing up with that iconic hockey mask at the end of part 1 to kill instead of his mom, and then continuing to 2 and 3 and 20 as they've done, I would honestly say that he would probably be the best. But since he didn't have that mask, since it was his mom killing in the first one, since in the second one they were still kind of trying to figure everything out, it kind of like holds him back a little bit. What do you think about that, Joe?
Look, I'll say this: another dude with crazy strength. I'm gonna my rebuttal is going to be
must work out.
My rebuttal is probably going to be more on what I think as far as like physical, abilities and whatnot. Because the stories, the story. I think after the first one, what the story is, and then why continue it? I mean, I think they got their revenge. The second one, we're getting that too. So another dude with crazy strength, and he's somewhat invincible, like Mike Myers. He's brutal in his kills. Yes, the machete is a powerful weapon of choice, and his look is crazy and menacing. I don't want to see some dude walking around with a hockey mask and a machete. I think we can all agree that our characters each have the looks down, just crazy. Jason. What the fuck was up with Jason X? Seriously,
I like Jason X.
He did.
I thought it was good. Yeah, the nitrogen where he puts the girl's head in the liquid nitrogen and smashes her up. That was.
I think it becomes like comical and so cheesy and comical that it becomes like enjoyable.
I don't know. That one was hard to watch after a while. Anyway. As far as like weak, physical abilities and whatnot, and that's because I'm going to try to focus on, I guess, a little bit, because it's hard to knock all these because we picked them. We all think they're the best. But I think as far as weakness, he's scared of the water. So if you got him near some water, he had a chance to survive. I think Freddy exploited that
I'm drowning.
Freddy versus Jason. I think he puts like some bad dreams in his head about him drowning, and it almost kills him. I think if you haven't seen that movie,
I remember that.
It was like Robin Hood Men in Tights.
That's right. With Little John.
Yes.
He can be a bit dumb. Jason, I think he's a bit point and click, I guess. And if you can exploit that, then you might survive. If you're out and about and you hear, then don't go that way. Don't run out and don't go get naked and take a shower. You'll survive. I'm not gonna fault him for him not being the character in the first one. I mean, it was a good story. Yeah, I agree with Bob. Hey, it would have been cool if he just came out from part 1 and just been Jason, the Jason that we know out of the 3. I think he's the closest to. Well, he is a human. He was a human. Well, they're all human.
We're all people, Joseph. We're all people.
He's motivated by revenge, and Freddy is too. And I think that at times they got played out as far as the sequels in Friday the 13th. Like, was the mom tried to take care of business in the first one. He's alive in the second one, and we see Jason, and he tries to take care of, business. I know he had some exploits. Yes, maybe he had some personal beliefs for, hey, you shouldn't be having unprotected sex, you young youths. I'm going to slash you. But, after a while, I think it got played out. And
I'll just wrap up with this before we go to Bob's. I just think the hockey mask is so iconic. The way he got it was, I think in part 3, there was a character. He was kind of a nerdy guy, kind of a funny guy. He had a hockey mask to scare his friends. And so when Jason discovered this guy, kills him, takes his hockey mask, and I think right there that was the birth, because yeah, the potato sack wasn't going to work with the one eye cut out. It just wasn't working. But the hockey mask is just so iconic. It's an old school hockey mask. It's not what the hockey players use nowadays. It's just so iconic. You wear that, you immediately know what it is. I think it's the biggest and best symbol of slasher horror that it is, and that's another reason why I selected them.
Masks, man, they work.
They
Masks, yeah. We all
Yeah.
wear masks, metaphorically speaking. And on to me now. I am going to go with a guy who didn't wear a mask. I chose, played by the great Robert Englund, I chose Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, I'm not going to lie, this guy scared the shit out of me as a kid. I mean, you all know that. All my friends, my family knows that. He scared the fucking shit out of me as a kid. There's no denying that. He's undoubtedly the scariest looking slasher villain of all time. I don't think, I know you said it, a lot of our villains, they have masks or they have certain looks. This guy was the scariest looking individual in this genre. Besides Jackie Earle Haley in the remake, who managed to look even creepier, but without the Freddy makeup. That's kind of strange. Freddy Krueger, he's got that look. He had the red and black sweater, the glove with knife fingers. He's a burn victim, and he's burned alive by parents in the origin story. So he's got a fucked up burned face. He's just got a creepy look, creepy stare, that creepy smirk, that smile. I think he has the best look out of anybody, or I would say the scariest look out of anybody in the slasher film genre. He's just so different, man. He's unique. He kills his victims in their dreams or in their nightmares, which was extremely original and so fucking cool. The way they came up with that concept, if you don't want to, like I said with Jason, if you don't want to die, stay the fuck out of Crystal Lake. If you don't want to get killed by Michael Myers, stay the fuck out of Haddonfield, Illinois during Halloween. This guy, there's nothing you can do about it. You have to eventually go to sleep. And at that point you were under his control, under his grasp, and you were pretty much fucked. There's no escaping him. And I thought that was such a great concept, because it's one thing to be afraid of somebody and, you're like, being chased by a killer, being chased by somebody, but at the end of the day, maybe you go to a hospital or a well-lit place, or you're in a police station, or you're surrounded by a bunch of people, so you feel safe. But as soon as you close your eyes, you're back in his grasp, you're back in his world. And I thought that was completely original and completely horrifying, really. And he does. I know you mentioned with Jason that he kills his victims in a lot of different ways, pitchforks and machetes and ice picks and all this crazy shit. Freddy does. He kills his victims in a lot of different creative ways. In the original, when he's dragging Tina Gray up and down the wall and on the ceiling, and she's getting smashed and scraped and clawed and killed, I thought that was fucking crazy, because you don't really see that. You usually see just in the slasher films, just normal, like a hack job, right? The knife stabbing somebody or choking somebody out. And this one, she's all over the place. Or Johnny Depp, lying in bed with his earphones on, and he gets like sucked into the bed. You see the big knife claw jump out of the bed and pull him down, and then a bunch of blood shoots out of the gaping hole where he was taken into, while his mother runs in and starts screaming. Like it's all like different, and that's what I think makes him so iconic and the best of all time, because he's so different. The way he kills people, it could be so realistic where he just stabs them in the front with his knives. It could be crazy in the dream world, dragging them up and down the walls, or claw marks on the chest, or bringing them into having their head smashed into a TV screen, or even when he sticks his gross tongue out from the phone when he's talking to the main character. I thought that was always gross. One of the creepiest scenes, of course, is when I'm going blank, but when the main character's in the bathtub and the glove just creeps out of the water and it's going towards her. It was fucking creepy and also kind of hot, which is kind of, it tells you a little bit about me, right? He's just the scariest villain, man. He's the scariest villain with, I think, the best storyline and backstory, with the kind of coolest and scariest and craziest kill method for his victims out of all the other slashers that we talked about. He's always been the scariest to me. He'll always be the scariest to me. And I think I'll probably be staying up tonight watching the Weather Channel.
Joseph.
Look, man, Freddy is cool. Look, and he's scary as fuck. That look is crazy. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. The whole kill you in your dreams, it's genius. I mean, when it came to picking someone for this, Freddy was a close second, more so than Jason, and I might have even put Leatherface before Jason. No offense, Randy. I didn't pick Freddy because I just feel like, as crazy and messed up as all the things that you mentioned, as far as the way he kills and how he can kill you, I think he can be stopped. I believe it's in the movies. It's and according to the lore, or guess, or whatever, he can only hurt you in Dreamland. So if you can get him out of Dreamland, well, one, he's powerless out of Dreamland. Granted, I know you got to keep yourself awake, but if I remember correctly, the way that people defeated him in the movies were to eventually just conquer your fucking fear, not be afraid of him, take control of the nightmare and shut him down. I know it's easier said than done if some motherfucker is doing some crazy shit, burned face, creepy fedora, and a shirt similar to the one you're wearing right now, Bob.
Iconic.
and a glove made of knives.
One glove, like Michael Jackson.
Scary shit, man. I know it's easier said than done. The movies themselves kept a pretty good, except for the Freddy versus Jason thing. I mean, it was a good idea. It just came out bad. I think it was the wrong pairing for that type of thing. I'm pretty sure nobody was going to get their hands on Michael Myers. So it would have been. It's not the best argument for me to say, like, oh, well, just take control of your dreams. Don't be scared. Accept your failures and push forward into the dream. But I mean, really, it's hard to. It was kind of hard to argue against him because he is pretty messed up. It's fucked up. I loved the story. That was something that we talked about. I'm not saying that these three didn't have great, like, I guess, or origin stories with Jason's, the whole thing that happened to him, specifically too with yours, Bob. I mean, they're both of them are motivated by revenge. I think that what's crazier about mine is Michael just, he's just evil. He's just a fucking evil being. Maybe not even. I think
there was some revenge. He killed his older sister because she didn't take him out trick or treating that night, so she can have some fun with her boyfriend. Come on, man.
I mean, she was supposed to be watching him, but I mean, she was more interested. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, that's my thing. I mean, great pick. These are all awesome picks. We love them all. I got t-shirts of all of them. So, it's good pick. What about you, Ren?
Freddy Krueger, definitely the scariest looking of the bunch, just because of, what he, I mean, it took me a while to sort of manage the courage to watch these movies just because of the aesthetics of it. The story was inspired by Asian death syndrome among refugees who suffered disturbing nightmares and refused to sleep. Some men died in their sleep soon after. That, coupled with Dreamweaver, of all songs, by Gary Wright, inspired Wes Craven to create this story. And what a great story. If I fall asleep, I'm gonna fucking die. We all gotta sleep, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So how bigger of a psychological mindfuck can you get more than that? It's more psychological than brute gore in most horror films, but of course, psychological thrillers, psychological horror films, they get you to think. They get you more scared than the actual chop off your head with an axe, right? It got a little too supernatural for me, especially with the Dream Warriors and some of these other things. Once they got more money for these movies, they got more creative in the dream sequences, and I think it took away from the original concept of, okay, we're gonna keep it simple. Obviously, when they killed Johnny Depp, more than 9 pints of blood shot up that fucking bed. I mean, the dude had more blood than God knows what. He could kick your ass. And Joseph, you mentioned this. He could kick your ass in the dream world, but he was vulnerable in the real world. The backstory on part 3 was a good addition. I think when they introduced his backstory, they realized, hey, we got something going on here. Let's run with it. And kudos to Robert Englund, because more so than anybody who's played Michael Myers, more so than anybody who's played Jason, there's been quite a few on both of them. Robert Englund has been Freddy Krueger from day one. Now, Wes Craven and the producers wanted somebody hulking and big, like Richard. I think it was Richard Brooker who played Jason, that he auditioned for the Freddy Krueger role, because all these killers, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Leatherface, Jason, Michael Myers, they were all big hulking guys. But Robert Englund came in, put some cigarette ash under his eyes, slicked back his hair, and came across as very creepy and menacing. He's only like 5'7", I think. And he said, look, when you're looking at psychopathic killers, they're all these little Weasley guys. None of these guys look like offensive linemen. They all look like little Weasley guys who live in their mother's basement. And they said, you know what? That's a great point. We're going to hire you for this movie. And he kicked ass. Do you guys remember the story where he fell asleep on the makeup chair and he woke up and scared the shit out of himself? Did you guys ever hear that?
Yes, dude, I read about that one. That's fucking hilarious.
Yeah,
man.
that guy probably didn't sleep for days, man. And I felt like, although I love Freddy Krueger, a huge pop culture icon, he got a little bit too comedic. The more the films went on, the more he became Bugs Bunny. And he dressed up as a waiter during one kill, dressed up as Superman in another kill. He became way too commercialized. They did a spin-off TV series, which wasn't very good. He did a video with the Fresh Prince called Nightmare on My Street. And how scary is that, right? So I think Freddy Krueger...
I guess you've never heard Will Smith rap.
I mean, Freddy Krueger is a scary entity. I think if they came up with the formula that stayed honest for part one, you could have really had something special. I don't know how many sequels they made for Nightmare on Elm Street, but I felt the more they went on and on, I saw the remake in the theaters. It wasn't too great, I think. I love Jackie Earle Haley, but I didn't really care for the movie. They should have brought back Robert Englund. I just felt that the more they went on and on, the more it just lost its essence. And I felt that it could have been a far better series if you'd have kept it at 3. But of course, when money gets thrown at you, when you're making a $10 million movie and you're getting back $60 million, you're going to keep making these movies because it actually saved. What is the film company? Was it Touchstone? I don't know what film company, but it actually saved that business, that film production company from going under. So it's the house that Freddy Krueger built. So of course they're going to keep making movies because it saved the production company. And unfortunately, it made a lot of bad movies. I think number one, I'd put it up against anything. I put it up against Halloween. I put it up against the first Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But I think Freddy Krueger as a slasher kind of just lost me at a certain point, especially with the Dream Warriors. Come on.
Yeah, I think that you could say that about all our characters. I mean, one goes to space, the other one's a part of a cult, and the story, they try to evolve the stories and kind of change them on 4 and 5 and 6 as the more and more movies are being made, and I mean they lose touch. But at the core, I think, no matter what the storyline was, at some point, he was going to be fucking scary at some point during that movie, like really creepy, dark, a slasher. And I think that's what saves him. But you could say that, you could say that about a lot of movies. So that's something that we argued about at the beginning, was they're not pumping out so many different original slasher movie villains. So, they kind of got to regurgitate. And yeah, we've already made 4 Nightmare on Elm Streets or Jason. I mean, Friday the 13th or Halloween. But you know what? They're money makers. And rather than just try to come up with an original idea or a new slasher, let's just fucking pump out another one of these, which kind of takes I think that's why Scream was just so popular when it came out. It was finally they invented a new villain and everybody was all in on it.
And the thing about Scream, and I think you guys would agree, is that everybody was in on the joke. They had all the tropes. Hey, don't say I'll be right back. Don't go off alone. The gorgeous, friend gets murdered because she goes off to go do something. Don't go off to have sex. All the tropes they attacked. And I think that's what made it fun. And they coupled it with an actually interesting, fascinating slasher movie. And to top it off, they killed an A-list actress at the beginning with Drew Barrymore. We thought when we saw her in the movie posters, this was her movie. She gets killed within the first 5 minutes. I thought that whole thing was brilliant.
Yeah, that's awesome. It was awesome.
That's Wes Craven for you, man.
Yeah, it's Wes Craven. Exactly. I think if we're talking best slasher movie of all time, that one's definitely going to give everybody a run for the money. Granted, it's one of the more recent ones. I mean, 96, obviously, but the other ones came out in 84, 82, 70s. Psycho came out in 1960, but I really do think it has all the right things. Has a great storyline, great character, great kind of method of killing, and Ghostface is really iconic too. So it was really a tough choice. This topic in particular, singling one out, of the big 3, or really there's like 5 or 6 that are just amazing that we could have gone with. But it's a great topic. I'm really glad that we finally got into this genre or this topic, because I know a lot of our fans and a lot of our listeners are really into horror.
I wanted to say real quick though, I know you're right when we talk about how they're just not really doing anything original. As far as our 3 picks, my pick is the only one that's still got movies coming out. One later this year. Yeah, for now. One later this year, and then one later in October of next year. My question, I don't have an issue with them, doing movies with these old characters from the 80s, late 70s. the first Halloween came out in the late 70s. I think it was 78, 79. I'm not sure.
Yeah, 78.
But I don't have an issue with them doing them. I just have my issue is if they do it right. The thing I like about these new Halloween movies that have come out, I don't have any of you guys seen them in this final timeline? If you're not aware, the final timeline, it's the first one released in 78. It's Halloween that was released in 2018, which is I don't know if you got to see that one. It's not the Rob Zombie ones. It's the Halloween that came out. Danny McBride is attached to it. He was a screenwriter. Surprisingly very good. I did not expect that from Danny McBride. And then the next one that's going to come out, Halloween Kills, that comes out later this year. These three movies that are going to come out, or the one that came out in 2018, the one that's going to come out later, they take place directly after that first one. So the thing I like about these, and I got no problem with these, is they're continuing that first one, the first one that John Carpenter did, and they want to like do that one justice and say fuck all the other ones that came out after the one that, after the first one. We want to go back and do what was great about the first one, and I think it's really cool. And I don't know if you've seen them. I think you would dig them, and I'm actually really excited to see the one later this year. So I know it's the same stuff. I know it's, hey, it's another Halloween movie, but these that are coming out now, I think they're done right. And I'm actually excited about them.
To side with you, Joseph, I think with the storylines, the fact that you've had so many talented people attached to them, I think most critical fans of slasher movies would sort of gravitate towards the Halloween movies. I think so. I think Friday the 13th, they tuned out after the third or fourth one. I think with Nightmare on Elm Street, they tried to reboot, didn't happen. I think they tired out, but I think Halloween, for some reason or another, maybe it's because it's named after the holiday, maybe because the story's compelling, maybe because Jamie Lee Curtis, the original Scream Queen, is still kicking strong. But I think most people harken back to Halloween when it comes to slasher films as the go-to.
I think it had definitely had an exciting remake when Rob Zombie redid the first one, and then now that you bring in back the original Jamie Lee Curtis, I think there's we always talk about there's that nostalgia factor that plays a big role in people's minds. So bringing her back, I honestly believe, like you had said, if they brought back Robert Englund to play Freddy Krueger in a brand new one, fuck, dude, people will be all over that. Just like they're going to be all over the Candyman because they're bringing back the original act. Halloween has that fortunateness that they've rebooted it, and then they've rebooted it, and then they've redone it again. And this one's going to take place after the first one. And it gets people excited because it's something different. There's a lot of, what if they had done this instead of making 2 and 3 and 4? What if they had just gone directly? I really did like 2. I really, really liked 2. So I wish they had made this one right after 2, but to each their own. It does kind of make me laugh, though, like you said, how it's tied to that holiday. You think of Halloween, the holiday. And what better way do you name Halloween the movie? So what are you going to watch on Halloween? Well, fuck, I got to watch Halloween. Sure. I wish it's kind of crazy how they have a horror movie for most holidays. They have Black Christmas, they have Halloween. I wish what's his name had continued making Thanksgiving. I know he did that little trailer in Death Proof and Grindhouse. I thought that was fucking awesome. But yeah, I think it does play to its favor that it's named actually after the holiday.
Let me ask you guys, if you guys could find an answer that could top this, I will capitulate. I will surrender and say you guys both win this argument. But this is going it has to do with slasher films. But is there anybody you can think of that deserved to die more in a slasher film other than Jack Black, and I Still Know What You Did Last Summer? Can you name anybody who deserved to die more?
That Jamaican dude, man. Fuck, I love how they reference that in Scary Movie.
As soon as you were saying that, I was like, wait a minute. I kind of got what you were going to ask. And I was going to say, if he doesn't say Jack Black, then I'm going to say Jack Black.
There's nobody that deserved to die more in a slasher movie than that motherfucker. I hated Jack Black. I was like, what the fuck are you doing?
Well, then he did it right. Because then you're like, fuck, finally, he fucking died. Goddamn.
You know what? I don't know. Matthew Lillard and his stupid fucking drooling mouth cry. Yeah, go ahead and kill him.
Matthew Lillard's a good one too. Final word on slasher films, guys. Do you guys think this genre, will this Halloween movie bring it back, or is this just we're just living in nostalgia? We're just wrapping up loose ends with this. But do you think there's going to be a comeuppance on a new sort of generation? Now, Kevin Williamson is a little older now. He went on to do Dawson's Creek and all these other things. But is there anybody that's going to come in and just take this to a new level, or have we seen it come and go?
I hope so, man. Like I said, they did the new Halloween. They're coming out with a new Halloween. They're coming out with a new Candyman. Scream 5's coming out later this year, or either in December or in January of 2022. It's coming out soon. I'm hoping that these revive this genre of the horror movies, man. I love these movies. These type of things. Somebody can come up with an original idea that would be fucking amazing with that good storyline and that iconic looking character. That'd be great. I think that it would bring some originality, and it would bring sort of that nostalgia factor to it, because it's kind of you kind of take from the 80s slasher movies and the 70s slasher movies, and you can kind of make it your own. So I'm really hoping that they do. I don't think it's dead in the water. I think just people need to get off their asses and come up with this cool idea, this new idea.
I want to see it, but I don't think we're going to see it. I don't. I think we're going to stick with this. I mean, granted, I'm excited to see the Halloween movies that are going to come out, but that's where it's going to end, or at least unless it's a remake or something new with Jason and Freddy or another Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something. I think we'll leave the serial killing stuff, slasher type stuff to the documentaries, and we'll stick to just scary ghost, demonic, type jump scare movies at you and mythical, like things like that. I want to see it, but it's like Bob said, who's going to come up with this new, slasher, and is he going to have a mask? What kind of mask is he going to be? It might be played out. Or it comes out as more different, like in newer ways, like how we talked about Death Proof and Joyride and Carrie King, things like that.
That's what I'm afraid of, is that we're just going to get like the reboots from these like popular, movies, Leatherface, Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, because they've already got a name. They already have a built-in audience. They already know my dad used to watch that, or my uncle told me about that movie. So I'm afraid that the originality after the Scream movies might be extinct. I hope not. I hope I'm wrong. I want to ask you guys another question. We know that slasher films are known for like their cringeworthy scenes, their horrible acting. Sometimes they're uncomfortable. Is there a more cringeworthy, uncomfortable scene than Jennifer Love Hewitt? And I know what you did last summer, spinning around saying, "What do you want from me?"
What are you waiting for? What am I waiting for? I love that scary movie. What am I waiting for? The guy jumps off the school building.
It was very unnecessary.
I thought that was horrible.
They wanted that.
As much as I love Jennifer Love Hewitt, here we are mentioning her again.
It was necessary, sir.
It was necessary for several reasons that did not involve the movie, but for other reasons, I'm sure we appreciate it. But having said that, that's our show, everybody. Listeners, we'd love to hear from you. Who is your favorite movie villain slasher? Who did we miss? Most importantly, let us know what you think about the show. You may reach us at formidableopponents@gmail.com, or follow us on Twitter at FOpponents, or on Instagram at formidable_opponents. And join us next week as we argue funniest sitcom character. That's going to be a great one. So for Bob and Joseph, I'm Randall. We'll see you all next week.
I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
I'm not sleeping tonight.